Cryptocurrencies come back under Donald Trump, setting the stage for a new digital gold rush or another regulatory minefield. Good morning and welcome to another power-packed episode of Business Week. This week, the global economy danced to the rhythm of rising tariffs and tumbling currencies. In Asia, Indonesia's rupiah, the local currency, slid to its lowest point since the Asian financial crisis, while Angola, right here in sub-Saharan Africa, hiked diesel prices by 50% under IMF pressure. And here in Nigeria, GT Co delighted shareholders with a bumper 8 naira and 3 kobo dividend, while Zenith Bank and UBA both posted record-breaking profits, signaling a banking sector boom maybe. Globally, the US blacklisted over 50 Chinese firms to slow Beijing's AI ambitions, even as Trump's tariff threats continue to shake financial markets. And of course, much later in the show, we'll be talking about artificial intelligence and cybersecurity with two amazing female tech Amazons. Stay tuned if you missed all the big business stories of the week. Don't worry, I've got you covered. I'm Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani. See you soon. Okay, as always, we start with global energy markets and looking at Brent crude oil. A whopping 2.72% rise week on week. Brent ended the week at $73.69 as at 5 p.m. yesterday, West Africa time, that is. Main driver here is sanctions. Sanctions. Of course, the US has imposed a 25% tariff or tax, or whatever you may call it, on those who are trying to import Venezuelan crude oil, increasing pressure on the Venezuelan government there with tariffs. That's affecting imports of Venezuelan oil into markets like China and India, and also increasing pressure on the Iranian administration with sanctions as well. All markets, of course, responding as they always do, tightening, traders worried about tightening supplies, and of course, that meant crude shot up as well. WTI, of course, followed suit to end the week at $69.52. That's a 2.39% increase from the previous Friday. Natural gas was down by 1.01% week on week. And RBOB gasoline was, of course, up by 1.83%. Let's look at equity markets, starting, of course, with Nigeria. No surprises here because we had some great financials from Nigeria's banking sector, which accounts for a huge part of stock market capitalization. The all-share index ended the week positive week on week, up by 0.66% to close at 105,660.64 points. Deals 13.24, volume of deals 547.57 million shares traded with a value of 21.6 billion, and stock market capitalization not bad, 66.25 trillion. To close the week. Let's take a look at equities in Africa, and I think it was a green sweep here as well. Across board, Johannesburg, Accra, Nairobi, and Casablanca were all in the green and clear, but Wall Street not painting the same picture quite because it was all red. Again, sanctions. The world is talking about, worried about, and reeling from sanctions. So Dow Jones Industrial Index was down by 0.48%. Week on week, S&P 500 also down by 1.606%. And of course, the big tech stocks, Amazon, Google, look, Meta, down by 2.04% week on week. So not looking good there. And of course, there are now fears around inflation and the US economy, which may be brought on by this new tariff regime, all set to kick in on the 2nd of April next week. And now to my favorite part of the markets, my top picks from around the world. Let's look at what's happening. The US has blacklisted 50 Chinese firms in a bid to curb China's AI capabilities. Some of these include the Beijing Artificial Intelligence Academy and Spur Corporation. And it's worried really about China's alleged plan to steal US technology in advanced and deep tech industries. The Chinese foreign minister has responded very strongly and has said this is an adverse move and could cause disruptions in global tech supply chains. Companies like NVIDIA and other semiconductor manufacturers are also really concerned about the impact of this move by the Trump administration on the global semiconductor value chain. So over 50 Chinese companies here are affected by that bid, and the Bureau for Industry and Security in the US is the one that is charged with imposing, blacklisting these 50 companies. Indonesia, the rupiah, that's the local currency of Indonesia, has fallen to its lowest level since, get this, 1998. The Asian financial crisis, a big concern there for the government of Indonesia. It's trying to tackle and deal with inflation and some macroeconomic headwinds. Some of those figures have not been very good. So the rupiah fell to around 6,640 rupiah to the dollar. And this is the second time this year, actually, we've seen a slump. This is the first time it has fallen to its lowest level since the Asian financial crisis of 1998. Concerns though around this very important emerging market in that region. India has also now considered cutting tariffs on US imports, as it's about $66 billion worth of its own exports to the US may also be affected. So, of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a visit to the Trump administration in February earlier this year, and there were talks around trade relationships between India and the US. The US has a $45 billion trade deficit with India. So this is a real priority for both governments. India has had imposed significant tariffs, actually, about 12% tariffs on US goods, compared to about 2% that the US had historically imposed on Indian exports into the US market. And so the US is worried about agricultural exports to India. India has a fairly high level of tariffs on US automobiles. So the dialogue between both countries have continued. Of course, everybody is working to and looking very closely at that April 2nd planned commencement of tariff imposition by the US. So the Indian government is worried about how if it doesn't concede to reducing tariffs on US imports, it might face adverse circumstances from the imposition of tariffs from the US. Interestingly, India has actually historically imposed tariffs on LNG imports from the US. So that's a big one. The energy trade between both countries is also in the spotlight. And speaking of energy, Angola has hiked diesel prices by 50%. Locally, it's gone from about 200 kwanza to 300 kwanza. In dollar terms, doesn't sound a lot. That's about 33 cents per liter. But the pressure is really coming from the IMF, which says that the government could save up to $3 billion in subsidies that could otherwise have been spent on health and education. Where else have you heard that before? But anyway, Angola has hiked diesel prices. Angola, of course, is Sub-Saharan Africa's second largest oil producer, second only to Nigeria. So interesting times in the downstream oil and gas market in that country. And time will tell whether the removal of subsidies will lead to further hikes in local refined product prices. And finally, almost a year ago, Dame Dr. Adora Umeoji, the CEO, the first female CEO of Zenith Bank, came into office, and I recall at the Capital Markets Day last year in Zenith Bank, she promised that the bank would surpass 1 trillion naira in profit. And that promise did come to pass, because at the announcement of Zenith Bank's full year 2024 financials, Zenith Bank is currently in the lead as the most profitable bank in Nigeria, posting 1.3 trillion naira in profit before tax. That represented a 67% increase on the 2023 PBT, profit before tax, which was at 796 billion. And of course, gross earnings were also up to over 3 trillion naira, helped by over 100% increase in net interest income. Of course, that is a result of the expanding loan book, as well as some of the yields that the bank was seeing on government securities. So Zenith Bank currently in the lead amongst the FUGAs, that's the top 5 tier 1 banks in Nigeria, commercial banking. And of course, we have results from GTCO and UBA later in the show. But again, considering that the bank successfully completed its recapitalization directive in an offer that was oversubscribed in the market, this is really a major boost to the leadership of the Zenith Bank CEO. And of course, the bank continues to hold its #1 spot as the most profitable bank in Nigeria. Assets also went up to about 30 trillion naira in assets. We've seen increases across board, strong capital adequacy ratio, well above regulatory limits and others. And we'll be talking a bit more about the banks a little later in the show. That's it for my top picks for now from around the world. In other news from around the world, Richard Teng, the CEO of Binance, claims that the Trump administration has been a fantastic start for the cryptocurrency sector. Teng said on Tuesday, and we quote, "We're operating in a very different environment." His remarks coincide with the Wall Street Journal report earlier this month stating that the cryptocurrency exchange is in negotiations to have the Trump family invest financially in the business. Bloomberg, on the same day that Binance was in discussions with the World Liberty Financial, a Trump-affiliated cryptocurrency, also reaffirmed this statement by the cryptocurrency platform. Well, in other news, Chinese electric car manufacturer BYD saw a 40% increase in sales of battery electric and hybrid vehicles last year, generating a record $107 billion in revenue. Last year, BYD's net profit increased 34% from the previous year to over 40 billion yuan, or $5.6 billion. And also in 2024, its automotive division accounted for about 80% of its total sales. About 4.3 million pure electric and hybrid cars were sold last year, according to the company. South Korean conglomerate Hyundai on Monday announced a roughly $21 billion investment in the U.S. onshoring industry. That includes a $5.8 billion steel plant in Louisiana. The plant is set to hire more than 1,400 employees and will produce next-generation steel that will be used by Hyundai's 2 U.S. auto plants to manufacture EVs. The investment was announced earlier in the week at the White House by President Donald Trump, Hyundai chairman Yusun Chong, and Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry. Still on the U.S., rising concerns about tariffs and inflation caused Americans' perceptions of their financial futures to plummet to a 12-year low, further contributing to the steep decrease in U.S. consumer confidence in early 2025. The Conference Board said on Tuesday that its consumer confidence index dropped 7.2 points to 92.9 in March, marking the fourth consecutive month-to-month drop and the lowest level since January 2021. A FactSet survey indicated that the rating fell short of analysts' estimates for a value of 94.5. Pierre Wunsch, a member of the European Central Bank's Governing Council, said that the future of interest rates is becoming more complicated as a result of planned tariffs by the Trump administration. Wunsch, who is also the governor of the National Board and Bank of Belgium, stated that tariffs would be bad for growth and probably inflationary. However, he added that the precise effect is still unknown and will depend on how exchange rates respond to duties as well as any possible retaliation. Here in Africa, South Africa's central bank governor, Lesotho Kganyanga, says the country's inflation targeting regime is out of date and might be inhibiting faster growth and making the economy less competitive. While the country's 25-year-old inflation targeting framework had helped lower interest rates from above 20% in 2000 to 7.5% now and helped reduce macroeconomic volatility, Kganyanga said a fresh look was needed in line with other developing countries. And in Nigeria, according to Yemi Cardoso, governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the bank is starting to observe progress in reducing inflation and stabilizing the foreign exchange market as a result of recent policy measures. Cardoso made the statement at the CBN offices in Abuja while speaking to academics from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. The CBN reaffirmed its commitment to promoting policy-oriented solutions and bolstering confidence in Nigeria's financial system in a statement released on Tuesday. Cardoso is the first African chosen to the global Harvard Kennedy School Alumni Board of Directors and is a Harvard Kennedy School alumnus. Now for some banking sector financials in Nigeria. In its audited financial records for the year that concluded on December 31, 2024, United Bank for Africa PLC UBA reported a pre-tax profit of 803.7 billion naira, which represents a 6% increase over the 756.6 billion earned the year before. The group's post-tax earnings increased from 607.6 billion in 2023 to 766.5 billion, a 26.14% increase. This is the bank's highest ever yearly profit, enhancing its standing as one of the most reliable financial organizations in Nigeria. Another banking result, in final dividends, GT Co PLC announced a record 7 naira per share, setting a bank record for the year's total dividend of 8 naira per share. Additionally, according to data from its financials, it's the biggest dividend per share that any Nigerian financial institution is expected to announce in 2024. The total amount of dividends paid out is 235.4 billion naira, I beg your pardon, or 23.5% of the 1 trillion in earnings made by the corporation.